I will ask my friend Jose Morales to explain in detail what experiences you had and how your near-death experience came to an end.
What I will tell you from now on is what I went through. In a corner between a piece of furniture and the wall, my lifeless body, and I ended up feeling as if I were in a space of neutral brightness. Then I looked to my right and there was a being of light.
Welcome to the channel called Eternal Life. Answers provided by the field of science. The thorough examination of near-death experiences. They provide us with a series of proofs, targets, and other types of tests with a scientific basis that allow us to affirm that physical death, it's not the end of us. But after physical death, our real identity remains, goes on in another situation, lively. Remember, in line with Bruce Grayson's definition, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, we examine the definition or concept of near-death experiences. They are subjective experiences. They are deep, with a transcendent component. In patients who are close to death, and that transcends space, when an ego. Today makes me happy to introduce my friend, Dr. Jose Morales. He has experience as a doctor in near-death experiences, and I am sure his contribution will help us delve deeper into the knowledge of near-death experiences. Doctor and buddy, Jose Morales, it is, I repeat, a great satisfaction to have you here today. And I say again that I am confident your experience and your knowledge in NDEs will serve to deepen and understand the intensity and pathophysiology of near-death experiences. Thank you very much for accepting this kind invitation.
Thanks for having me here. It is not only a pleasure, but also an honor to be here by your side and to be able to share all this content.
Thank you very much, Jose. Briefly, a quick overview of my friend Jose Morales' curriculum. Dr. Jose Morales was born in Lerida. He earned his degree in medicine and surgery at the University of Lerida from the Faculty of Medicine. He is a specialist in family and community medicine. He has a master's in emergency medicine, a master's in behavioral psychotherapy, and he teaches in the family medicine master's course. Okay, with this brief intro, let's kick off a series of questions and talks between him and me on near-death experiences, which I say again, I believe will be quite important for understanding near-death experiences. Friend Jose, have you ever experienced a near-death experience, and how long ago was it, if you really had one?
Yes, I can confirm that I have had a near-death experience. It took place about 2.5 years ago, and it was during a very happy time in my life, a time I never anticipated, but it happened.
Had you ever had any experience related to ECMs before? Was this your first contact with this transcendent phenomenon? Okay. We are interested in knowing what triggered it. Logically, near-death experiences involve a lack of brain perfusion. What was the trigger for your near-death experience? Why did it occur?
I had been having, for some time before, a heart irregularity that sometimes would act up and cause issues. And, in this context, when I was, as I mentioned, in a very joyful time in my life, I was living in a place that I dream of, the Ebro Delta. I was working in the outpatient clinic. I felt quite well, accepted. I was very comfortable in my job. and one when I lay down for a siesta after getting up, I fainted. And from that moment, it all began.
I want to clarify a concept. Cardiac rhythm disorders are a result of an alteration in the excitatory tissue of the heart. The heart's excitoconductive tissue includes the Ashoftawara node, the His bundle, and branches. Is a part of the cardiac tissue that regulates the continuous stimuli throughout our lives that determine the heart's contractility. When alterations occur in this excitatory system, it leads to the emergence of arrhythmias, and it was in fact one of the triggers for the near-death experience that Dr. Jose Morales talks about. So, it is very important for us that a physician who understands human anatomy and physiology has experienced a near-death experience firsthand and can share it with us. The factors of truth logically are at their highest here. I will plead, my friend Jose, to explain to us in detail, descriptively, from start to finish, how you lived it, how it started, what you experienced, and how your near-death experience concluded. Please, Jose.
As I said, after waking from a nap on a weekend, I stood up and lost consciousness. What I will tell you from now on is what I lived through, what I lived. As I said, I passed out, and my next conscious experience was seeing myself outside my body from my own height as if I were standing, and I noticed in a corner between a piece of furniture and the wall my still body that was not breathing. And I, as a person familiar with seeing people who have died, because in 40 years of practice, I have mainly worked as a rural doctor, and whenever there is a death, the doctor needs to go and certify the death. So I, with what I saw, was amazed. I was stunned. I saw my body there and understood that was my body, and my body was something lifeless, something dead. Next, I experienced a feeling like being sucked into a kind of whirlpool. And I showed up in a dark area, dark, limitless, where I saw myself as if I were floating, like you see submariners in the ocean sometimes. I saw myself there, floating, seeing my body as if it were lit by a non-existent spotlight, and when I looked up, I saw a light, and my consciousness, what I saw of myself, was like being drawn toward that light. I even sensed a breeze, a nice breeze, as I moved toward that light. For a moment, I was making my way there, and as I went, I felt more relaxed, more like I was accepting the situation. And when I arrived at that light, I found myself in a mountainous scene, as if from a summit you could see a valley, a very beautiful valley, a valley with beautiful colors, with much contrast, with a lot of brightness, where all was peace, all was calm, all was connection. There was a feeling of unity like I had never felt before, of feeling at one with everything. That relaxed my state of mind and filled me with deep peace. As time moved on, that experiential time of the experience, it turned more and more whitish, more neutral, and I concluded being in a space of a neutral brightness, in the context of which, let's say, there was nothing. I glanced left, and I saw there, a few meters away, a friend from my youth who I lost at 23, who was named Tomas Jose. He had been my sole friend for a few years, and I had also been that for him. A very significant person whom I deeply mourned losing, because she was an extraordinarily brilliant person, something older than I, who had a brain tumor and who underwent a surgical procedure to attempt to remove it. Imagine yourself in the middle of the 70s. It isn't like nowadays when we have a plethora of imaging techniques available. He was subjected to surgery in an attempt to eliminate that issue. And because of that, he spent 2 years in a coma, and upon waking, he, who at that time would be around 23 years of age, he had a deformity in this area, which was a result of the surgery. He was blind. He had right side paralysis. And I saw him there, stunning. Not Tomas Jose that I knew, but the ideal Tomas Jose, the Tomas Jose who might have existed if he attains his full physical potential without any sort of a factor that conditions.
Did all the physical defects disappear that he displayed due to surgery?
He was handsome, and I saw him in a suit that I don't remember ever having seen him in, but I saw him with a unique radiance, I would say, and furthermore, there was a connection intimate between us that felt like an emotional link. It wasn't just conversations, but a profound connection. I felt immense joy, and I had the urge to go hug him. Yet he, as if he said, "Don't hug me, keep going." I didn't get it then, but later I understood, and I realized I now understand that if I had hugged him, I probably wouldn't have been able to return. When I became aware of that, couldn't remember that moment without some tears. Today, I witnessed such generosity from him, so much selfless love, that he was willing to give up, hugging me, even though I knew he wanted it badly, perhaps to give me the option to return, which at least was part of that I paid attention to. Then I looked to my right, and there was being of light. A being of light, it was large, it was, if I measure 175, perhaps this being of light, that was not intimidating at all. It was kind, it was friendly, but perhaps it was 3 meters tall, as I perceived it there. Yet it radiated acceptance, and it shared with me the acceptance of a mother embracing her baby, meaning it soothed me, it was calm, it's okay, don't be concerned. And being in that embrace, well, facing me, something like that appeared, and think of it as a metaphor, like 100 screens all at once, reflecting moments of my life, some very significant, some trivial, and that I, in one blow, could see the panorama of my life from my birth until I leave life. And it caught my attention. It felt like seeing frames where you know the entire movie well, so it grabbed my attention to those times when I behaved, let's say, with selfishness, without charity, without compassion, in an incorrect manner, and simultaneously the being, and every time I witnessed this, I felt more stressed. And this light being I'm speaking of transmitted to me calmness, all is well, nothing is wrong, everything is fine, nothing is wrong. I have to say, this vision wasn't only cognitive, but it had too an experiential element, an empathetic element, which surprised me and caught me off guard. And in those times of heartache, of selfishness, of disappointing the other person, I was not only aware of that evaluation, but I also felt, and keep in mind, I had no body, but I felt as if it were somatic. And also, emotionally, the feelings that were provoked, what I caused in the other person. So it was like I was feeling within myself the effect I had on the other person all at the same time. But I stress this as I can't put it into words, but it is both in emotional terms, the feelings of the other person, the disappointment and so on, and in physical terms, the knot in the stomach, the sweaty palms, the discomfort. That made me feel very bad because I became aware of all the mistakes, while that being of light transmitted to me a tranquility. It was your ignorance. You are not judged, but in an emotional way, and I translate it into words. That was incredibly intense, and I thought, I have to go back. I want to mend. This thought arose in me. I must clean my karma. It became something that occupied my entire mind. The light entity told me, well, if you wish, return. Nothing happens. And in this emotional intensity, the next thing I felt was like a backward fall. And the next memory, which is already a worldly memory, is feeling myself in my body. It was me, not that person over there, but it was me. And I felt an intense pain in my back between the shoulder blades, and also a pain here in the frontotemporal region. Then, with all the discomfort I felt, I was, as I said, trapped, as if I managed to crawl out of that situation and went to bed, spending a few minutes trying to collect myself, to make sense of that entire experience that I had gone through. Once I felt ready, I got up, I went to the living room, my wife was there, and she said to me, "Hey, you have a lump on your head." And I answered, yes, I knocked my head in the dark. I got out of that as best I could. And from that point on began a period that I call the dark night of the soul, which lasted 6 months of, I felt discomfort. It wasn't depression. I didn't have thoughts of ending my life. No, I had just lived through something. It was quite shocking that I was trying to find an explanation that I couldn't comprehend. And during those 6 months, I engaged in a sort of intense search to see if I could understand this. I started reading books and watching YouTube videos of people who had experienced these experiences. I saw that what I initially thought was something unusual, because it's true that I have heard, just like a lot of people, on a certain television show regarding the ECMs. I had read some books that were bestsellers like the one by Dr. Raymond Moody, but well, is an integral part of our culture. But I said in those 6 months, I was confused until I told it finally, and that marked another. It was a time, and those are the 2 years that followed.
Extraordinary, Jose, extraordinary. The description of your near-death experience, there are 3 aspects I would like to clarify, often mentioned to patients in NDEs. Firstly, they communicate with the beings they encounter during the NDE, not by our typical methods of communication, but rather through the power of thought. In the second place, all of their experiences related to the fact that our 3-dimensional human dimension is linear, consisting of past, present, and future. They always refer to it as a single time. Everything is present, everything is the current moment, everything is now. And in third place, the convenience they have for getting around. In other words, there exists a convenience and the notion of space-time vanishes. They refer, for example, that if I think I am in Australia, on the opposite side of the world, at the same moment they think they are in Australia. These 3 aspects, did you or any of them really experience them during the near-death experience?
Yes, definitely the first 2, and the third one, the one about other places, no, I was involved in my experience. In relation to the time that you referred to, I want to clarify something that might have bibliographic support, but I'm just mentioning it. And the thing is, the ECM happens in folks that show the phenomenon, a complex one like the one I've mentioned. So it has been confirmed that arises between 15 to 20 seconds after cardiac arrest. Then the process starts. On the other hand, it is also a fact that in an extra-hospital environment, without any type of cardiopulmonary resuscitation support, without any maneuver defibrillator, well, after about 40 seconds, the heart that is stopped, if not defibrillated, now is not coming back again, no rhythm at all. At that moment, I have to say that I am aware of what happened in earthly time. It happened in no more than 20 seconds. Ever since I began experiencing the ECM in 20 seconds to the Mac, where I was naturally capable of being defibrillated without any kind of external intervention. In these 20 seconds, everything I mentioned occurred. And while I could have possibly explained it in 5 or 10 minutes, I would tell you in earthly time, an hour and a half, but with tremendous intensity. And about the first point, communication, I would tell you that it is not just communication due to the thinking of content, but based on my experience, it's something absent in typical cognitive thinking derived from language, and it represents a powerful emotional bond. I mean, I not only knew what Tomas Jose was thinking, but I was connected to his emotions. We spoke heart to heart without any words in a way that could be considered telepathic. However, I think the verbal content isn't as significant. I have to express words, but it contained emotional content, a type of meta-language, which I cannot articulate. The same goes for the being of light.
I want to ask another question that patients with near-death experiences also refer to. They remember their entire lives, and the longer it has been after the near-death experience, the more alive all their experiences during the near-death experience feel. Have you forgotten, or do you keep it completely present in your mind and can describe it at any moment with all kinds of details? And as time goes on, it becomes more vivid for you. Does this happen to you?
Well, I experienced something interesting. The near-death experience, the experience of NDE, was a special time with a special brightness. And now, if I talk to you about my NDE, it would be, let's say, just a regular memory. But when I take a moment to relax, if I relax and immerse myself in the experience as if I were in another part of my brain, so I do recall that experience with an intensity different from my normal experience. In other words, it's another matter, and there's a kind of set which, whenever, in solitude and deep relaxation, I can access it. I am able to experience it in a very intense way, with a level of intensity I can't reach in normal thinking.
The near-death experience you went through has greatly influenced your psychological state, especially your existential beliefs. Is your existential view now different from what it was before the near-death experience?
Yes, definitely. It is indeed. As a family doctor, I enjoy my work a lot, and my goal originally was keep practicing until I could no longer do so. In other words, if I could retire not just at 65, but at 67 or 70, if my physical condition allowed it, which nothing hinders me from doing, I would have liked to. It was my original plan. I would have liked to continue, earn more money. Feeling useful also feeds your ego. You engage in helpful actions, and your environment also provides prestige based on the work you do. Therefore, I was happy doing what I enjoyed and being well paid. After the near-death experience, in that dark night of the soul I referred to, I had an intense change of values. That is, of course, you have to keep living. You need material things. You must seek the best you can provide for your comfort and for those who depend on you. With money, you can do good things too, but it's not that urge to say, I want more and more. Once you have one, you want two. And when you want two, you want four. So I reflected, internally reflecting that if I retire early, I would have enough to survive simply for myself and for those who count on me, that I wished to make time to explore psychology and spiritual matters and to help in other ways. In other ways, and one of those ways is to give visibility to NDEs, because in truth, the ultimate question, the main question that we humans ask ourselves is what happens when we die. That fear of death, according to
Lost
many...
your fear of death, Jose?
Yes, completely. I should mention that I didn't have a specific fear of death. And the big difference, as statistics show, is that in contrast, within the normal population, 1/3 of the population has a huge fear, a dreadful fear of dying, and 2/3 of people have a normal fear of death. Nobody likes to die. So one thing that studies on this phenomenon say is that those of us with NDEs, even those who had it, no longer do. Meaning that 100% of those who experienced an NDE have lost their fear of death. I can't say I want to die. Rather, the NDE has made me love life even more. I appreciate it even more, but it's about not fearing it or seeking it. just waiting for it.
It has changed since the moment you had your ECM. Naturally, one views it as a phenomenon, as you mentioned, quite significant. So have you faced any problems communicating with your family or friends? Being able to communicate and share your near-death experience, which is real and certain for you. Have you faced any problems with comprehension from those around you, family, friends, doctors, etc., to understand the reality of your near-death experience? Or have you seen in general a certain attitude, I wouldn't say disdain, but rather, don't worry, it's just a hallucination. This, when a person has a cardiac arrest, they might experience hallucinations, so don't make a big deal of it. Have you noticed this difficulty in communicating and expressing your near-death experience with the environment you have been in?
Let me share my experience, and I should mention that compared to the experiences of many people from different conditions and non-medical backgrounds, when they have done this, it has been different. I will explain mine. For 6 months, I was unable to talk. I didn't share this with my wife or anyone eventually. No, due to that dark night of the soul, because of that confusion, it's that as if life suddenly collapses, as if it were a castle of cards, and then you say, well, now, what do I rebuild and how? That's why I tell you that what happened to me affected me deeply. So, for 6 months, I kept it to myself. And then, all of a sudden, one day, on a summer night, an August night, when I had some guests over at my house, my wife and daughter were too. During our time at the table after dinner, in a laid-back moment, a time for sharing jokes, I said, look, suddenly, I want to tell you something you won't believe. The people, the ones who were there, who were 6 people, they thought I was going to tell a joke, a prank, an experience, and I started this. Well, sort of like I said. I was able to appreciate how people's expression shifted and they transitioned from that context of humor and ease to expressions that grew more serious and more astonished each time. My wife was the most surprised. When I finished my tale, he said, I remember it because of the bump. And until now you haven't told me, and I have to find out here. With friends, couldn't you tell me? And I said, no, I can't. So when I said it, that place, my daughter, wife, and the others there, they believed me. They know me. I wasn't someone with delusions or a history of the paranormal, of oddities. I'd say it's the first time they heard me say something like this, both my family and my friends. Then I began to spread it, but in a very private environment, so to speak. One day, a woman came to my office who had lost her son. She lost her son in a dramatic and unjust way, hit by a drunk driver. And since that moment, she had been in a deep mourning process, which was logical, and it altered her life. And at one point, there wasn't a particular trust between us yet. All of a sudden, I thought to tell her, what if I told you that when you die, you'll reunite with your son, that he hasn't disappeared? She was surprised and told me, I can't believe it. It would have to be someone from there who tells me. And I replied, look, I can share my experience with you. She found me at a time when I was free. I shared some insights and told her, this happened to me, and I assure you, that when you die, you will meet your loved ones who are thriving, and that this reunion is joyful. Nothing has been lost here. You'll see your child again. And she told me, if that's true, I want to die now. And I replied, no. I said, I also feel that when you are here, you have the chance to grow. You have the chance to make. And the best way to honor their memory, the best way to nourish that reunion is to remember them and remember them until you meet again, knowing you will meet again. And she replied, I'm surprised by what you're saying, but if you say it, since you're my doctor, I trust you. So I confirmed, I verified there was a connection, heart to heart. And I saw that it had been a deeply healing experience for her. I saw her again later. She was getting better each time. And we had more conversations. And after I retired, I haven't seen her since. But that experience made me see that part of my purpose in life was to provide visibility to the phenomenon. As for certain people, those who are meant for this experience, it holds a healing power. And due to this healing power, break time 0.9, and it is worthwhile to share it. The effort to make it known, not just me, who only has the experience, but you and I, we are conduits, we are tools of that greater plan beyond us that desires this experience of mine, that wants your certainty that you share through your channel and that others do likewise, to offer hope to them, to those in pain, to those who require this certainty, to those who don't. That's another discussion.
What you say is extraordinary, wonderful, and exciting, Jose. I'd also like to make a comment to you. With in-depth studies of near-death experiences, especially applying theoretical physics, quantum mechanics, we have concluded that, from a structural point of view, the human being is body, which is low-frequency energy, collapsed energy in matter, is mind, which is high-frequency energy, electromagnetic waves that we can record in the electroencephalogram, and then we have our true identity, our supraconsciousness spirit or non-local consciousness, which is what truly persists after our physical death. It is our authentic identity, what makes us unique and exclusive. We can connect with this supraconsciousness, with this existential reality of ours in the unconscious. It comes through the patients we diagnose as clinically dead, like in your case, a stop from arrhythmia, a total blockage, or complete arrhythmia. There is a possibility to consciously connect with our supraconsciousness. There are other paths like meditation, etc. Have you connected consciously at any other time since your NDE? With this supraconsciousness of ours, with our existential reality? Have you been able to experience it, connect with it at any other time, or has it not been possible?
I should mention that, and I don't want to seem odd here. I mean, I don't want anything to obscure the experience. After this, it is true that having that experience as a reference helps me when I'm in a period, in a moment of great relaxation, not only to relax, but also to reach a certain state. I connect with something special. I return to that light, but without consequences. Paranormal. I mean, I don't know the lottery numbers for next week, but I do connect with something, and that has had an effect on me. And it answers your question in that it has made me more spiritual. I'm not saying I'm more religious, but I am more spiritual, more in touch with the spirituality. that I didn't know before and didn't engage with. Now it feels like I can take flight. But of course, it's nothing like that moment of splitting.
But when you have this feeling of contact with something that brings you closer to your near-death experiences without any transcendent events, it comes with a feeling of harmony, calm, joy, love, and a sense of openness that you are united, that you are part of everything, that you are connected to the entire universe. Do you sense this feeling?
Well, I'd say they are strong sensations of connection and empathy. I mean, I believe that people, great meditators, through hard work, also reach states like the one I had during my NDE, with a special luminosity, with a special connection, and that I can still experience. I couldn't provoke it right now, and I also can't easily provoke it just by doing consecutive breaths. But that reference does help me to say there is something superior to me, which Juan Ramon Jimenez expressed beautifully because he said, I am the one who goes with me and the one who will stand when I die.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Listen, Jose, we've roughly covered the key points, the most important aspects of NDEs. But now I give you an opening, a possibility. Do you want to add anything else? Any comments you think are interesting that could enlighten us further on the deep understanding of NDEs? Do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, well, look, it's me. I've mentioned is a response to what you asked me. You said, describe what happened to you. I'll describe it, and it's probably interesting for those who listen, and I understand it. I see why they share it. But honestly, for me, what matters is the change that happens in the person. That change that makes you live and view life differently. When you come back, when you reflect, and I would say it's not an experience and so lovely, you return illuminated and you float through life, as I mentioned. After this, and after I talked about it, it was well received both by those around me in my close circle and later by those who have listened. That time was a period, hardware, as I told you, everything unravels and you have to rebuild everything. But it causes change. Without a crisis, there's no change. Without a crisis, one keeps planning a comfortable life. So, I believe today that those 6 months of crisis have been the most productive and transformative of my life. So, what I say, the real test of NDEs is the change. A person who states they've had an NDE but is still bound to selfishness and materialism. Well, I say, I'm no one to doubt it. It may be true, but it doesn't match my experience.
Well, I feel that what our friend shared, Jose Morales, is truly extraordinary. It supports the understanding we have of near-death experiences. These experiences, which I've referred to before, are frequent. There are countless documented cases, and the details, the aspects that constitute and structure the near-death experience repeat themselves in a very evident and clear way. Jose has told us about them. I believe we owe him thanks because he has further illuminated our minds in understanding NDEs. And I believe Jose Morales' case, as a physician deeply knowledgeable about humanity, both from the material, anatomical, and physiological perspectives, and also in the emotional aspect, like other doctors, such as the well-known Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon from Harvard University, are elements and life perspectives that compel us to think and reason more deeply about NDEs regarding the reality of these NDEs. They are persons, I repeat, who with a deep understanding of humanity are so convinced and sure that NDEs are a reality that transports us to another level of dimension, we abandon our classic three-dimensional human situation to move to another dimension, highlighting our structural reality that genuinely makes us unique, exclusive, and is holistic concerning our structure, this supraconsciousness regarding the primary consciousness, the primary intelligence, the origin of all religions. Therefore, I can only thank my good friend, Dr. Jose Morales, once again for his generosity in sharing these moments with us by talking about NDEs, and most importantly, to thank him for the clarity he has brought us in grasping the reality of near-death experiences. Friend Jose, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Manuel.